Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all and to all beloved beings everywhere. So welcome, dear ones. We are studying the life of Sri Sarada Devi, the Holy Mother, as given to us by Swami Chetanananda in his book, Sri Sarada Devi, Her Divine Play. For those who need to know what page we're on, Haima, can you tell us?
It's 587, page number. We are in Udbodhan, that is the chapter.
Okay, well, unless someone has something they'd like to contribute just as we begin. No? Okay. Haima, please go ahead.
Sure. Brother Shankara, I'll go back to one paragraph behind that will flow better to the one that I'm coming in.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Holy Mother said, how can the Master's service be dry? You should reflect upon the cause of dryness. The human mind becomes accustomed to a certain condition. And when it goes to another situation, it feels uncomfortable and it longs for the previous condition. At that time, one should pray to the Master. You will see that he will make your mind joyful. In the beginning of spiritual life, it is not good to study and discuss the scriptures day and night. This makes the mind dry. If you study and meditate on the Master's divine play, you will notice that your mind will be saturated with sweetness and joyfulness. The mind becomes peaceful when one hears Sharat's Leela Prasanga and M's Kathamrita. You should also read Akshay's Punti, which is Holy Mother is referring to Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and a portrait of Sri Ramakrishna. Whenever I have a little time, I like to listen to it. Once Vasudevananda and other monks were making a lot of noise downstairs. Golapma became upset and said to Holy Mother, what is this? You have no control over these boys. The Master would discipline his disciples. No one could misbehave even slightly. The mother replied, what can I do? I don't see any fault in others. So how can I discipline them? Moreover, I am their mother. How can I punish them? I receive them and clean away their dirt and impurities. They are all the Master's children. Is it so easy to punish them? He has his own way of making everything right. His overwhelming love will set them straight. Our Master was the embodiment of love. There was no harshness or rudeness in him. When people say Well, God will give you the result of that person's karma. I then pray to the master. Master, do good to both the ignorant and the intelligent. I tell the boys, don't harbor ill feeling for others. Don't pray to God to take action against others. Rather, pray for the welfare of the oppressor. God's judgment is well balanced, and there is not the slightest mistake in it. There is no end to his mercy. Once Swami Basudevananda fell ill with influenza. He said to Holy Mother, Mother, generally the mind is restless. Now that I have this terrible physical discomfort, it is hard to concentrate on God. The mother replied, my son, learn to divide the mind in two parts, discrete and indiscrete. The discrete mind is like the parents, and indiscrete mind is like the children. Parents are always watchful over their children. You should scold and punish the mind if it does anything wrong, as parents scold naughty children. Thus, if you continue to practice this for some days, you will notice that the mind will come under control. If a bad habit takes root in the indiscreet mind for many days, then 100 scoldings cannot uproot it. At that time, pray to the master to change the weak mind. There is no other way. He is God. He can do anything. He can recast the old mold into a new one. As a potter gives shape to raw clay, the master could give shape to human minds according to his wish. He could build a human character according to his will. Do you want me to read that back again, Brother Shankara?
Well, first I'd like to just comment that, as I often do,
Okay.
that this isn't just meant for the people she was speaking to then. It's meant for us now. If we wish to change our way of thinking, therefore our way of speaking and acting, of course we must do our manana, we must do our contemplation. But what the mother is saying is, ask the master, ask Sri Ramakrishna, ask the divine presence, the living presence, to make that contemplation, that concentration, that meditation on new ideas and on a new way of thinking, speaking, and acting, to make that fruitful. And it's the testimony of many that this actually works. So, including, of course, the Swamis. If you poke them about it, they'll tell you, yes, they have had resort to these promises of Mother and done what she suggested. So it's a good idea, I think, Haima, to read that again, yes.
Okay, Brother Shankara. Once Swami Basudevananda fell ill with influenza. He said to Holy Mother, Mother, generally the mind is restless. Now that I have this terrible physical discomfort, it is hard to concentrate on God. The mother replied, my son, learn to divide the mind in two parts, discrete and indiscrete. The discrete mind is like the parents, and the indiscrete mind is like the children. Parents are always watchful over their children. You should scold and punish the mind if it does anything wrong, as parents scold naughty children. Thus, if you continue to practice this for some days, you will notice that the mind will come under control. If a bad habit takes root in the indiscreet mind for many days, then 100 scoldings cannot uproot it. At that time, pray to the Master to change the weak mind. There is no other way. He is God. He can do anything. He can recast the old mold into a new one. As the potter gives shape to the rock clay, the Master could give shape to human minds according to his wish. He could build a human character according to his will. Next subheading is blessed are the simple and sincere.
The simple and what, dear?
Sincere.
Sincere.
Yes. A young vagabond named Chandra Mohan Datta came to Udbodhan publication office one day looking for work. He sat on the outside veranda and fortunately met a man named Mohan who worked for the household. Chandra learned from Mohan that Udbodhan House was an office of the Ramakrishna Mission and some monks lived there. Chandra asked, "May I meet the head of this center?" Mohan asked him to wait. He soon came back and said, "Please come. The mother has asked me to take you to her." Chandra was a little perplexed to learn that women also lived in this mission office. However, he went to the upper floor to see Holy Mother. Chandra recalled, at the first sight of the mother, I felt that she was my own. Her eyes were so calm, as if compassion were dripping from them. I bowed down to her and she blessed me by touching my head. She inquired about me in detail, my name, where I lived, who else lived with me, and so on. The simple-natured Chandra opened his heart to Holy Mother, describing his pain and agony, his brother's ill treatment of him, and how he was desperately looking for a job. The mother listened to his story and then asked affectionately, "Are you ready to do any kind of work, or would some kinds of work affect your prestige?" Chandra replied, "I shall be doing my mother's work. Where does the question of prestige come in?"
What a wonderful answer.
Yes. Pleased, the mother
Please
said.
repeat the question
Sure.
and the answer, please.
Sure. The mother listened to his story and then asked affectionately, "Are you ready to do any kind of work, or would some kinds of work affect your prestige?" Chandra replied, "I shall be doing my mother's work. Where does the question of prestige come in?" Please, the mother said, "Some of my monastic children and a few women live in this house. We need someone to do our shopping. My son Sharath decides whether to give an appointment. Go with Mohan and meet him." Mohan said to Saradananda, "Maharaj, the mother has sent this gentleman to you. She has mentioned that if you consider it necessary, you may appoint him to do our shopping." Smiling, Sharadananda said, "Who am I to appoint? You have already come to me with an appointment letter." He then said to Kishori, another worker, "You said that you needed another person to help. Train this young person to serve that purpose." Chandra was hired at a salary of 10 rupees per month to buy groceries every morning with Mohan and to pack and sell books published by Udbodhan House. Whenever there was a festival in one of the Ramakrishna ashramas, Chandra carried books to sell from a stall. Thus, he was instrumental in spreading the master's message and increasing the income of the Udbodhan publication department. When an individual takes a sincere step, then all gods attend, and his single deed is sweet, said Henry David Thoreau. Beautiful.
Say that again, please.
When an individual takes a sincere step, then all gods attend, and his single deed is sweet, said Henry David Thoreau. The mother's heart melted as she observed Chandra's sincerity and loving service. She initiated him and sanctified his rosary. She also asked him to do some small errands for her.
Oh my goodness, this man was fortunate indeed.
One day she said to him, "Do you know why I have some of my work done by you? When I am no more, the memory of all this work will bring solace to you." Another day she said to him, "My children will not be born again. You too will not be born. This birth is your last birth." Tears of gratitude trickled from Chandra's eyes. Sarada heard the mother's blessing to Chandra and joyfully told him, "Well, so you have managed to attain your end. You have accomplished the sole purpose of life merely by doing some odd jobs for her, for whose favor Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are engaged day and night in such arduous austerities. Go now, romp about free of care." Once a terrible flood in East Bengal swept away Chandra's house, leaving his parents, wife, and children homeless. When the news reached Chandra, he felt helpless. He did not say anything to the mother or the monks. He was so depressed that he could not eat or sleep. The all-knowing mother learned about Chandra's situation and said to him, My son, no one has any hand over providence. Don't be brokenhearted. Go to your home and take steps to put everything in order. What will you gain from worrying? Why are you not eating properly?" Chandra replied tearfully, "Mother, what can I do there? Our home and everything we own has been swept away. We need a lot of money to restore everything. Moreover, I don't even have any travel money." The compassionate mother said, "I know your situation. Take this money and go home. This money will cover your travel and repairs to your house. But don't tell anyone that I have given you money. Tell others that your house has been inundated by a flood, so you are going home." Saying so, the mother handed Chandra a bundle of notes that were tied up in the corner of her sari. Chandra was overwhelmed by the mother's unselfish love, compassion, and generosity. Later, according to Holy Mother's instructions, Chandra rented an apartment in Bosapara Lane near Udbodhan House and brought his wife and children from Dhaka. But the owner of the house was rude to the children and they could not play freely. When the mother heard about this, she asked Saradananda to have a house built for Chandra and his family.
Bah.
Wow, how sweet. Beautiful. The Swami always obeyed the mother's command. He bought a piece of land for Chandra on Bosapara Lane and built a small house with brick walls and a tin roof. This made the mother happy. Holy Mother also initiated Chapala, Chandra's wife. One day, the mother gave a handful of rice to Chandra and said, "Tie this up in a piece of cloth and place it in the earthen jar in which you store rice. There will never be want of rice in your household."
Bah.
That is the end of the chapter, Brother Shankara. Udbodhan chapter is ended. Now we are going to go to divinity. If you want to discuss.
Hold on just a minute.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
This subhead was titled Simplicity and Sincerity.
Yes.
I mean, what does it,
Amazing.
if we listen to what happened to this man, because he was simple, sincere, honest, and hardworking, how can we have any questions?
Yes.
He was blessed, but these examples are put in this book so that we too can come to this situation. The mother is not gone anywhere. The master has not gone anywhere. They've simply shed their mortal form. They are there in their subtle bodies. And so everything that happens to these people who Chetanananda describes can happen to us as well. If you have any doubt about these words at all, just write to Chetanananda. He's the head of the St. Louis Center. You can email him, you can write him a letter by post and say, "We've been told that the stories that are in your book about the mother are illustrations of what can happen to anyone if they behave in the way the mother recommends. Is this true?" And just see what he says. And if you have any doubts, I recommend that you do that. You write to him. He's still active. Some of you know Sujata. Sujata was just initiated by him on New Year's Day, Kalpataru Day. So I said to Sujata, don't just then pick up your belongings and come home. Before you go, arrange to stay another couple of days. And the expression used in the conversations I've had with the Swamis is, you poke the honeycomb. You ask, you prevail on the Swami that you want to hear from. And you just don't take no for an answer. If they say, "Oh, well, I'm busy just now," say, "Well, when then, Swami?" So if you poke the honeycomb with a request for your doubts to be soothed, you can believe that the Swami will respond. Are there any comments or questions about what we've been reading or what was just said?
Yes, Brother Shankar, I have one question.
Yes, dear.
Why did Holy Mother shower so much grace on Mohan Chandra?
Sham, this is absolutely unanswerable. She obviously recognized him from the moment he came into the room the first time. She gave him a blessing by touching his head, which was not usual. It says he bowed down. It didn't say he touched her feet. If that had been the case, I think it would have been related as such. She immediately saw, the mother, like the master, could see right to the core of any human being that came into her presence. For that matter, any being. And since all are her children, every living and, for that matter, inanimate object are her creation and her children. The Chandi, as you know, anyone who's read it, makes this very explicit. Then when she sees that someone is ready, the blessings are showered. That's the best I can do, Sham. There's no way of knowing anything in more specific terms about why this particular fellow was so, so graced. But the general principles apply. Anything more? If there's more questions, please
Thank
ask.
you. But are there any other examples similar to this one?
Oh, well, we've read many of them as we've gone through. That fellow that was a thug and a thief. That fellow that was beating his wife, and the mother came to him, or she said, "Bring him to me, or see that he comes to me." And she told him, "Don't beat your wife." And he said, "Well, she isn't having any sons. What can I do? My line will end." And she said, "Well, just pray to the master, and I'll pray to the master for you too." And so that couple later had a son named Shantiram that became a great favorite of the mother's. She came to know this child very closely. So there are many examples. If you go back through the book, you'll find that there are many, many examples. If you remember, that thug that was her disciple came to her and told her he was having terrible headaches. And she not only gave him, she rubbed his head herself with some special oil and sent him away with the remainder. Knowing she's omniscient, knowing that he would continue to commit crimes and so on, as we were told when we read about it. The woman who came and with her family, and she was so poor and so on, and mother gave her clothing, mother gave her money. Many, many examples are there. Some of these people became her very close companions, like this Mohan, Chandra fellow, became very close to her. Some of them encountered her once or twice, and that was all. But when Girish Chandra Ghosh, he had been transformed by Sri Ramakrishna. And he came to see the mother at Jairambati. Now, he had only seen her veiled when she was at Dakshineshwar, when she was at Kashipur, and so on. Whenever she was in the presence of any men who were not her direct ones, I mean, the boys, in any event, Girish Chandra Ghosh had only seen her veiled. When he got to Jairambati, she didn't have a veil. She wasn't wearing her veil. And he said, "Oh, it's you. It's you. This is the very form that when I was just a young man in his 20s, he was sick unto death." That form of the mother came and put her hands on him in a vision, or you can say, I mean, we don't know exactly how it worked, and he was healed. And he said, "Who are you?" He said, "You're that very one." And she just laughed. And he said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am your real mother. I am your true mother. Not just the wife of your guru, not a foster mother, not some sort of strange made-up mother. I am your real mother, your true mother." And that's true of all of us. And this is why we're told, go to her, go to her, go to the master. And Jesus, who said it the most explicitly as has ever been put in any scripture that I've read, he said, "Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. If you ask your father for bread, will he give you a stone? If you ask for a fish, will he give you a serpent?" For the same is true of these great holy ones, the ones who came for no other reason than to set us free. And that's why she said, "All of my children, this is their last lifetime." Thank you, Sham, for asking about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to add or say or ask?
Nobody is asking you questions, so I will step in, Brother Shankara. I truly believe in this. These things do happen. Definitely, I have no question. And this particular Chandra, he completely surrendered to mother. He said, "I shall be doing my mother's work." Where
Yes.
does the question of prestige come in when she asked it? So she sees him, he completely surrendered to her. "I'm here for you," type of, I am here. So I could see that while reading, these things do happen. There is always, when the door closes, there's always a window opens.
Yes.
That's what happened to him when he lost his wife. I was in a position like this, and things like this happened to me. So I could see these things happen to us. We have to believe in and have faith in God and trust in God. I think it just happens. It happens automatically. Angels come to help you. So
We have to be a little careful about our words, Haima.
yeah,
It isn't that we have to. It isn't that we have to. We're invited to.
we're invited to.
And if we accept the invitation,
Okay,
then,
thank you.
but there's no have to.
Okay,
The divine does not compel us.
Sure.
They leave it up to us to compel ourselves. She told that Swami, just when your mind misbehaves, the indiscreet mind, act like a parent, scold it.
Yes, that was nice. Thank you, Brother Shankara, for
But
correction.
it's not a
Sure.
question of have to.
Sure.
It's
I
a
agree.
question of what is auspicious for us. What is auspicious for us? And we decide this, it seems, for ourselves.
Mhm.
Knowing that Sri Ramakrishna emphasized over and over and over. It's in the gospel at least once every 10 or 20 pages, that everything happens at the right time. So this happened to this fellow Chandra just at the right time. Now, why did the mother have a roll of rupee notes tied in the corner of her sari? She knew he was coming. These divine beings are omniscient. They're ready for us. It's only we must come to them. And notice that she invited him to come to her. What's troubling you, my child?
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
So we may feel that we have to. That's up to us.
Sure.
But there is no dogma about it. There is no, that is not the way that the divine operates with us. Thank you, Raimo.
Thank you, Brother Shankara, for correcting me. That was very nice.
So anything else from anyone before we read on?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Aaron.
Can we look at like that by happenstance we're here at this class right now as an invitation from the divine?
Oh, absolutely, Aaron. Absolutely. The fact that you're motivated to be here and do this, I mean, all you have to do is read chapters 5 and 6 of the Gita and see what Krishna says about where our motivations come from. But yes, emphatically yes, we can see it as an invitation and a blessing. That this is where we choose to spend from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Tuesday evening. It's a blessing and an invitation. And what are we invited to? What has just Mother been saying? Come to me, come to the Master. And notice what Swami Shardananda said when this fellow went back downstairs and said, to him, well, I've been asked to talk to you about a job. He said, you already have a job. The mother gave you the job when she sent you down here. Now we just have to find out what you should do. So he participated in the shopping, and he participated in the packing of the books. And apparently he took the initiative then to not only, when there was a Ramakrishna Order event, he would go and set up a little stall and sell the books. Now, in those days, I don't think the monks did that kind of work. These days they might. But I don't think there were enough of them, for that matter. But also there may have been a little, reputation issue about doing that kind of work. Doing face-to-face selling that way. It may still be the case, I don't know. In any event, as we were told, he took that initiative. So, yes, we are invited. There's a wonderful story in the Gospel of, I think it's Matthew or maybe John, about the Lord of a manor directing his servants to prepare a sumptuous feast. And he says, send invitations to all of my friends. And back came the answers, oh, I'm involved in a real estate deal. I can't take time to come just now. And then one thing after another. They all turned the invitation down. And so he said to his servants, well, we've made all these preparations. Just go out in the street and invite whoever wants to come. Take that story, tie it together with the story of the prodigal child, and you have the image of the loving, inviting divine presence that wants you to come to the feast. Thanks, Aaron. Anything else from anyone?
Brother, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
The way I would like to describe like coming to these meetings is, imagine if you are in a very cold, dark forest filled with wild animals, and then, you have a fixed time and where you can enter a very warm hut and sort of get like warm coffee.
Lovely.
Very nice.
Yes, that is the effect the mother has on us, isn't it, Rajiv? And she will fix us a warm cup of coffee, no doubt about it. Coming in out of the cold. Thanks for that remark, Rajiv. That was very, very well articulated. Anything else from anyone?
Namaste, Brother Shankara. Namaste, everybody.
Hello, Shailesh.
Sorry, I cannot turn my camera on. I'm recovering from COVID, but feeling much better now.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry that you got it.
Yeah, but I think because of all the shots and everything, I wasn't much better than Vandana, but we are recovering now. About the story about Chandra, it looks like it's very uncommon, but if you read the life of saints, Indian saints, what I've seen is that there are several such incidents in life. Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta Maharaj or a couple of other saints which I have seen. I've read their lives. There are such devotees or workers, rather, I would say. Apparently, they would look as workers, but these are very, very spiritually elevated souls. And I used to visit Pune Mutt, and I was a devotee, and I was very young. I'm talking about 91, 92, about 30, 31 years ago. And I'll tell you a story of these two people who used to work there. So there was this old woman who used to work, and all she did was clean utensils, clean the kitchen, clean the utensils. And there was another person who was a helper to her, kind of a handyman. And they were for years and years, they're doing the service. And just looking at them, we could feel that these guys they were just there, but there was something else in them. And all the devotees had tremendous respect for them, including the visiting Swamis. And if you ask Swami Yogatmananda, Rajiv Maharaj, he will tell you that these two devotees who were the workers, we all had immense love and respect for them. I remember this, so that image jumped to my mind when Aimaji was reading about Chandra.
Shailesh, let me just interrupt for just a moment. Why don't you write an email to Swami Yogatmananda and tell him that you would like to read to this class his response to just what you said. If you ask Swami Yogatmananda, he will say, please do. And then when you get his reply at some future class, read us what he says. We'd love to hear it. And that'll
Sure.
give you that'll give you the darshan of Swami Yogatmananda by writing to him and getting his reply.
Yeah, I'll definitely try. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. I mean, you'll never go wrong getting in touch with Yogatmananda, I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
And thanks for mentioning that.
thank you.
Yes,
It's
these people are if you go to the Hollywood Center, for example, and just see the people who live there who are not monastics, who are just, they're part of the team that makes that place run. Really, what a remarkable bunch of young men and women, relatively young men and women. They all seem young to me from this perspective. Thank you, Shailesh.
And so I just wanted to add a note, like Sham was saying, does this happen? But yeah, it does happen even today. In all the centers, if you go, you will see such workers behind the scene working, like Brother Shankara said, they are non-monastic, they are not monastic, so they are not in the limelight. They don't get up and speak or anything, but these guys are extraordinary. And I think it's a blessing to be just there, to stay there, work, and get soaked into it. Now, with all these years, I realized that those people are actually more fortunate than so-called people like us who are so busy with other things in life.
Well, it is transformative. There's no two ways about it. Being in that holy company all those years, working, it transforms them. And like you said there at Pune, that kitchen would have been in some difficulty if it hadn't been for those two people. And certainly, if you look at the way the Hollywood Center runs, they would be at some pains to make everything happen if it depended only on the monastics. So, thank you, Shailesh. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears, let's go ahead.
Okay. The next chapter is the Divinity of Holy Mother. I'm going to read a hymn by Swami Abhedananda in English translation. I always salute Sarada Devi, that gracious goddess, who removes the sufferings of those who bow down to her, who is worshipped by the masters of yoga, who is the very personification of spirituality for this age, who is the giver of devotion and wisdom, and who is the embodiment of compassion. I will read one more time, Brother Shankara.
Please do. Yes, I was going to ask that if you hadn't volunteered.
A hymn by Swami Abhedananda.
Let's just say a word about Swami Abhedananda.
Okay.
Notice that a great number of the chapters in this book have been started with something from Swami Abhedananda.
Exactly.
For those of you who don't know, Swami Abhedananda, at Swami Vivekananda's request, served here in the United States for 22 years. 22 years. Does the Atlanta Center have any antecedents of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna? Yes, indeed. Swami Abhedananda came and spoke to standing room only crowds in 1913 and 1914. He came to Atlanta at the invitation of the local psychological group, psychological association. And then the second time he came, his expenses were shared by the Masons as well, the Freemasons. And so Abhedananda was a titan. And if ever you wish to understand karma better, how karma works, in, I believe, 1915, maybe, I think it was then, he gave a series of 3 or 4 lectures at the University of California in Berkeley. They were gathered together into the book, The Doctrine of Karma. Because I was asking Swami Swahananda about karma, he gave me a copy of that book. So this is Abhedananda, not just this great devotee, but this great intellect and this tireless worker, tireless worker. The Swamis, Swahananda, Chaitananda, others, many of them have great, great respect for Abhedananda. Any of his works, he has several volumes of collected works himself that you can buy. Quite a remarkable individual. So please read the hymn one more time, dear.
Okay, a word by Swami Abhedananda. I always salute Sarada Devi, that gracious goddess who removes the sufferings of those who bow down to her, who is worshipped by the masters of yoga, who is the very personification of spirituality for this age, who is the giver of devotion and wisdom, and who is the embodiment of compassion.
Well, you can't get much better than that in the form of a goddess, can you?
According to the Hindu scriptures, when God incarnates as an avatar, his Shakti also incarnates with him as his spiritual consort. Krishna said in the Gita, whenever there is a decline of dharma, which is righteousness, and a rise of adharma, which is unrighteousness, I incarnate myself. In the Chandi, the Divine Mother said, whenever the demonic powers try to disrupt or destroy this world, I shall incarnate and destroy those enemies of divine beings. Some religions believe only in the fatherhood of God, but Hinduism asserts both the fatherhood and motherhood of God. Brahman is consciousness and devoid of form, so it can manifest as male or female. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is said that the creator was not happy because he was alone. He desired a mate. He became the size of a man and wife in close embrace. He divided this body into 2. From that division arose husband and wife. This concept is symbolized by the Hindu deity Ardhanarishwara, one half of whose body is female and the other half male. Moreover, this deity has become manifest as Rama and Sita, Krishna and Radha, Buddha and Yashodhara, Chaitanya and Vishnupriya, and Ramakrishna and Sarada, all divine beings who have taken human form. Holy Mother was a Devi, a goddess, but she took on a human form to fulfill her divine mission. Her birth, conduct, and actions were divine, but she concealed her divinity. Ramakrishna once humorously said that she was like a cat covered with ashes. Although she was surrounded by her family, monks, and devotees, and behaved like an ordinary woman, she could not hide her divinity completely. From time to time, she revealed her true nature to some of her close disciples and devotees. Next paragraph heading is Holy Mother reveals herself. One way to recognize divine beings is when they speak about themselves. Otherwise, it is not possible for ordinary human beings to comprehend the infinite Lord. In the 10th chapter of the Gita, before Krishna reveals his divine manifestations, Arjuna says to him, "You are the supreme Brahman, the supreme abode, the supreme purifier, the eternal divine being, the primal God, unborn and omnipresent." So say all the sages, including the divine sages Narada, Asita, Devala, Vyasa, you also say unto me. Other avatars or divine incarnations also declared their divinity to their disciples. Krishna said, "Fools disregard me when I assume a human form, for they are unaware of my higher nature as the supreme Lord of all beings." At many points in this book, I have related important incidents pertaining to Holy Mother's divinity. Chapter 2 narrates the divine circumstances surrounding Holy Mother's conception. Chapter 3 describes the period in Kamarpukur after her wedding when 8 young girls, the 8 confidantes of the Divine Mother, accompanied her. Chapter 5 describes in detail Holy Mother's encounter with the robber in the meadow of Tilobelo, and how the robber and his wife saw Mother Kali in her. Chapter 11 tells how Holy Mother took her terrible form of Bagala to subdue crazy Harish who was threatening her. Ramakrishna was fully aware of Holy Mother's divinity. When he spoke about her to his disciples, he said, "She is Saraswati, the goddess of learning. She has assumed a human body to impart wisdom to human beings. But she has hidden her celestial beauty, lest people, by looking at her, should befoul their minds with sinful thoughts." When Hriday was jealous of Holy Mother and treated her rudely, the master cautioned him, saying, "Look here, you may insult me, but don't hurt her feelings. If he who dwells in this," meaning himself, "hisses, you may somehow get by. But if he who dwells in her hisses, no one, not even Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva, will be able to protect you." That's so beautiful.
Yes, well, so we have to be just a little careful with the mother. We have to be aware of the fact that this is the power that creates the universe, and we don't want any thunderbolts. So I think it's probably 9 o'clock.
Close to Brother Shankara. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock now.
Yeah.
Yes, we can
Well,
stop
dear,
there.
I'm going to ask Haima to mark her place,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to ask, are there any final thoughts or comments or questions from anyone?
Yes, I think that it's really incredible that almost 200 years later that the mother's wisdom can still be shared with us and we can still experience her wisdom.
Well, you know, this is the thing, Aaron. She only left us in 1920.
Ah, yeah, okay.
She left this world in 1920. So it hasn't even been just a little over 100 years since she was physically present. It's only been in recent times that the last of her direct disciples died. So it's really quite remarkable. But you, as you say, you know, since it's been a couple hundred years since all this transpired, I guess you could say, since it's almost 200 years since 1836. It's when the master was born. The mother was born in 1853. Swamis Vivekananda and Brahmananda, the two principal children of those two, were born in January by the Gregorian calendar, January 12th and January 21st of 1863. So, you know, this is very recent. This is very recent. That's why it says in the evening prayer, O Lord and soul of the universe, we're born as a child of our time, easy of access to us. So but I agree, Aaron, that it is incredible that we're able to gather together like this and hear from such an elevated soul as Swami Chaitananda, who just told us where to look in the book if we have any doubts about the Mother's divinity. He just said, if you have any doubts, just look chapter this, chapter that, chapter the other, 2, 3, 5, 11. So, Saraswati, anyone who hasn't already come to know who is Saraswati, I request, just as an invitation from here, I request that you look it up. It's really quite remarkable. You can see so clearly why the world has changed so much since 1853. If you look at the world in 1853 and the world in 1953, you simply wouldn't believe what happened in 100 years if you compare that 100 years to other hundreds of years that have taken place in human history. The spiritual wave of intellectual and artistic and scientific energy that she brought with her. And you know, Dr. Richard Feynman, the great quantum physicist, it said if you want to understand quantum physics, read and come to understand the Feynman diagrams. He was asked about God in a little BBC interview. And the interviewer asked him about God. And he said, well, I really don't know anything about God. Now, this is Dr. Richard Feynman, Nobel laureate, one of the most prestigious people of quantum physics in the mid-20th century. He says, well, I really don't know anything about God, but I do love Mother Nature, and I implore her to share her secrets with me. He knew the mother. He knew the mother. And he wasn't taking credit for what he had done. He was saying it was the mother sharing her secrets with him. You can go and find that interview. So you can find it on YouTube.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I think we are also blessed and lucky to be living so close to these divine incarnations
Yes.
living on this earth. I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I assume that even when Rama and Krishna had taken the embodiment, during their time, perhaps not many people recognized or respected their divinity. Now they are mythologized, and mythology is always more appealing than reality. So we tend to like believe those rather than what appears to be more human.
Well, you know, Rama wandered through the forest for those 14 years. And during that time, he encountered many encampments of sadhus. It's said in Valmiki's Ramayana that only 12 of those groups recognized his divinity. The others were following the non-dual path. And when they didn't recognize who he was, he just laughed and went on. Didn't condemn them. So yes, we are fortunate indeed to have some sense of who it is that is inviting us to freedom. Because that's what the invitation is. The invitation is to be free. Whether we hear it from Mother, whether we hear it from the Master, whether we hear it from Vivekananda, Ramananda, or Sarvapriyananda, or Yogatmananda, Sarvadevananda, Satyamayananda, they're all giving us this invitation to freedom. And as Jesus said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. It isn't much that's demanded of us. As a matter of fact, Sri Krishna says in the Gita that the only thing that is necessary is to understand who he is and why he came. In other words, to accept the words that he gave us about who he is and why he came. Because he tells us quite clearly. And in various places, the Master does too, Sri Ramakrishna. And we're about to learn in this chapter as we read on even more about the Mother's revelation of her divinity. Thank you, Swam. Anything else from anyone before we sign off?
Brother, you mentioned that thunderbolts, sometimes some people or some persons can do something that invite the mother's wrath. And like somebody was telling me that you should, it's more like in order to avoid thunderbolts, it's better to worship benign forms of the mother and not the fierce forms of the mother like Kali.
but there are like benign forms. Is there any reality in that?
This is above my paycheck, Rajiv. I think you should ask one of the senior swamis about this. I don't, from here, there is no harm in worshiping any of the forms. Mother's terrible forms will not be terrible to us if we approach her with humility and love. That's what it says in the Chandi.
Hmm.
But this fellow, this was mentioned just in what Haima just read. I think she said it was in chapter 11 of this book that we're reading, that there's this story of a fellow named Harish who was crazy, just flat out crazy. And he began to really terrorize the mother. So she took her terrible form of Bagala and whomped up on him, jumped on him, and whomped on him. But she didn't destroy him, and he later regained his sanity. So the whomping that the mother gave him had its effect, not immediately, but over time. So even if our behavior earns us a few moments or some time with a terrible form of the mother, it's only for our own good.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I just remembered the story that I heard in one of the talks, and it's been a while, so I cannot remember who the Swami was or in what context, and I hope I'm able to narrate the gist of the story correctly. But apparently there was this couple who were devotees, I think, of the St. Louis Center. So when they initially came, they were kind of turned off by the Kali aspect of the mother.
Yes.
And then they somehow, but they liked the, I guess, the philosophy, and so they stuck around and then slowly became devotees, and ended up living near the center for many years. And then the husband passed away, and the wife chose to remain. This was like a part of town that was not supposed to be the safest, and but they didn't want to move because they had, I guess, developed something, and it's also a lot of social work they did, teaching the underserved and things like that. And she also did not particularly care for the Kali form of mother. But one day there was a knock at her door, and it was one of the people that she had taught, a student who had now grown up. And he said, "Will you let me in?" And something in her hesitated because she was alone. And so she didn't open the door initially, but then he insisted, "I'm your student. Can you not open the door for me?" So she did open. And then, of course, he showed his true intent, and I guess, started attacking. And she just said Kali's name, I forgot exact name, but Mother Kali or something. She took the name, and the guy just stared at her and just ran away. I wish I could remember the exact name that she took, but it was something about Kali, hey Kali, or something like that. And he took one look at her and ran.
Well, see if you can find that story again and tell it to us next week.
I will try. It's been so long that I have, but I will try to revive my memory and see if I can.
Well, there's all kinds of tools on the internet also for finding these things.
Yes, that's true.
So anything else from anyone? Thank you, Swayam. And I'm glad we have this illustration of taking the mother's name. Swami Prabhavananda said, my guru, Swami Prabhupada said, you have to be careful with Kali because, you just can't be careless in dealing with something so powerful. But he said, Kali is not terrible in her essential nature. Kali is the mother of all in her essential nature. But she has this aspect of being the mother of the terrible as well as the benign. Otherwise, there wouldn't be terrible in the universe. There wouldn't be this balance of dark and light. So see if you can find it. And if you can't, well, that's fine. But if you can,
I will try.
bring it back to us.
Sure.
Its particulars. And I suspect that was during Swami Satprakashananda's day rather than Swami Chaitananda's day.
Oh, yeah, I think it was long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Satprakashananda is the one that started that center. He also was a disciple of Raja Maharaj. Anything else from anyone?
Brother, there's one more thing on like I was reading on Kali, and so Sri Aurobindo has a book called Four Aspects of the Mother, and he mentioned that Mahakali is one of those forms, and he and his associate, there's another person, Mira Alfasa, who is recognized as the mother in that group. So, I was reading something, and they said that the actual spiritual form of Mahakali is golden, and she's very beautiful. And when some of her powers are sort of descending in the material world, it sort of acts sometimes as in that form, which is generally represented. And then they also mentioned that many times there are people who sort of carve things out of their imagination, and it may not
Yes.
represent the real Kali.
Well, we all have our experiences of the divine. And not everyone has the same neurology. Some people are what is called neurodivergent, and they'll have different experiences than those of us who are nominally normal. In certain cultures of the world, particularly the Native American as well as the Australian, those people are the Australian Aborigines. I hate that word, but nevertheless, that's what they're called. These people, these neurodivergent people, are highly prized because they have a different version, a different vision of universe than us. And there's something in their estimation to be learned from these people. So, all right, dears, it's getting along toward 9:30. I'm going to sign off. So good night to all of you. So good to see you. Now, tomorrow night, for those of you who come to the Wednesday night class, that text that we use there doesn't come from a Kindle book. It's a word processing file that I read from. So there won't be any difficulty about that. And by next week, I should have all this solved. So, or even by Saturday, I should. Amazon just wants everyone who uses Kindle to have less privacy. It's as simple as that. They want to be able to track everything we do. So be it. That's the way it seems to work with these behemoths of the information technology. So, Om Asato Ma Satkamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityor Ma Amrutangamaya, Abir, Abir, Moiti. O dearly beloved Lord, lead us from this realm of relentless noise and confusion, this relentless delusion, to thine abode of serenity, silence, peace. Lead us to thine abode of serenity, silence, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Om Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Until the next time we meet, good night, dears.